In today's English lesson, we are going to listen to a conversation between JD Vance. He is trying to become vice president. He is the running mate of Donald Trump, and another guy. His name is Joe Rogan. He is the host of a very popular podcast here in the United States. I have already listened to this and I wrote down 43 different terms, idioms, maybe some swear words that might give English learners trouble. So by the end of this English lesson, you will know how to swear a little bit better in English because guess what? JD Vance has a potty mouth. He swears a lot. But don't worry, if you are watching this with young children, I have silenced all of these swear words. You will probably know what he says, but you will not hear what he says. Let's take a listen to the first part, and then I will come back and teach you all of the things that could be hard.
Oh, all right. How are you, sir?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
What is it like running for vice president of the United States? How crazy is this experience?
It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird. I was just telling you this earlier, but the first time that I've been in a public spot without Secret Service in the room is right now.
To start, Joe Rogan says, "We're rolling." And believe it or not, just a couple English lessons ago, I talked about rolling. I think the news report says roll it. So Joe Rogan says we're rolling. And as you can see, that means we have started or we are beginning to do something. So I think he was just letting JD Vance, hey, we're recording. So anything you say now, everybody around the world will be able to hear. Maybe we should talk about these two things together. JD Vance talks about the Secret Service pretty much watching every moment that he is alive, awake, but every time he is out in public, I'm sure the Secret Service is there. So let's talk about what a public spot is. It is the opposite of private. Somebody's bedroom would be private, but a public spot is a place where everyone can go, like a park, a cafe, an arena where JD Vance might be giving a speech. As you probably know, President Trump or former President Trump, there have been a couple people who have tried to kill him. The Secret Service, very important people. They are people who protect important leaders. And since JD Vance is running for vice president, he is now a very important person.
Oh, all right. How are you, sir?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
What is it like running for vice president of the United States? How crazy is this experience?
It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird. I was just telling you this earlier, but the first time that I've been in a public spot without Secret Service in the room is right now. So I'm like looking around for these guys because I'm used to just having them. It's 3 months, right? So he asked me the Monday of the RNC convention, which I think was June 15th.
I think JD Vance was confused for a second. He said that the RNC, which we will talk about in a minute, the Republican National Convention. I have done some English lessons about the RNC. He said that President Trump asked him to be his vice president or his vice presidential running mate back in June, but he actually meant July. Those 2 months start with J, so it's pretty easy to get them confused. We also have a couple days of the week that I think can be confusing. Thursday, Tuesday. I think I often mix those up when I'm speaking.
It's 3 months, right? So he asked me the Monday of the RNC convention, which I think was June 15th. And I really didn't know that morning. I thought that he was probably going to pick me, but I didn't know for sure. Probably 60-40, basically.
JD Vance talks about 60-40, like he was 60% sure that President Trump would ask him to be his running mate. maybe 40% that he wouldn't ask him. He could have also used this English phrasal verb, leaning towards. He could have said something like, I thought Trump was leaning towards asking me to be his running mate. You know, if it's 50-50, it's right down the middle. 60-40 is kind of leaning one way. If you want to know more about the Republican National Convention, I did an entire English lesson on it. I will leave that one at the end of this one. There will be a link for you. But it did happen this past July in a city called Milwaukee. We'll talk more about Milwaukee in just a minute. And by just a minute, I mean right now. JD Vance talks about Milwaukee time. We have 4 time zones in the continental United States. When I say continental United States, I don't mean Alaska or Hawaii. So New York is on one time zone. Chicago is on another one. There's another one we call Mountain Time Zone in the middle. I don't think there is really a big city in Mountain Time Zone. Maybe Denver. And then LA or Los Angeles is on another time zone. Chicago and Milwaukee are in the same time zone. Just last month, I was actually in Milwaukee for a football game. I filmed an English lesson at a hotel in Milwaukee if you want to check that English lesson out.
I thought that he was probably going to pick me, but I didn't know for sure. Probably 60-40, basically. And so I had no idea. I get the call around 1 o'clock at Milwaukee time at the RNC convention. I'm hanging out with my kid. Another one of my kids is in the other room asleep because, you know, our kids are young, so they nap still. And he makes this call, and he's like, hey, do you want to be my vice president? I was like, oh.
Was it literally just like that?
Well, actually, what happened is I get a text message from a staff member on his team that says you just missed a very important phone call. And I don't know, you know, because there's so much inbound traffic that I think it just went straight to voicemails.
JD Vance mentions inbound traffic, which might make you think of cars, but he means like messages. So I'm sure his phone, being such a famous, important person, is always receiving messages. He actually missed the message from former President Trump asking him to be his vice presidential running mate. And he says he thinks it's because of all the messages and phone calls he normally gets. With my little YouTube channel, I don't have that much inbound traffic, which is why I can often respond to most comments that you leave. Hey, thank you so much for leaving all the nice comments. While I'm thanking and asking for things, can I ask you to like this English lesson? It helps other English learners find it. Of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss another English lesson. Speaking of getting so many messages, sometimes your inbox gets filled. That means you have so many messages to listen to, your phone can't take any more. But if you do have some room for messages, we might say that it went to your voicemail. If a phone call goes straight to voicemail, that means the phone never rings. And that is what probably happened to Trump's first phone call. It went straight to voicemail.
Well, actually, what happened is I get a text message from a staff member on his team that says you just missed a very important phone call. And I don't know, you know, because there's so much inbound traffic that I think it just went straight to voicemail. So I call him back and I'm like, hey, sir, what's going on? He said, JD, you just missed a very important phone call. I'm going to have to pick somebody else now. You know, so I'm about to break here.
So JD Vance is going to tell us that he swears a lot because he was raised by his grandmother, who also swore a lot. Swearing, we'll talk about cussing in a minute. That means saying bad words. In my real life, and of course on this YouTube channel, I never really swear. I never really say bad words, and you won't hear me do that today either. JD Vance says a word that starts with S It's like crap. Crap is a good way to say that word without swearing. Nobody says crap a brick, but that's what he meant. It's just another way to say he is nervous. I'll just leave it there. I don't want to talk too much about that other word and using it as a verb. Let's just move on. There will be other swear words though. Don't worry.
So I call him back and I'm like, hey, sir, what's going on? He said, JD, you just missed a very important phone call. I'm going to have to pick somebody else now. So I'm about to brick here. And then he says, no, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I want you to be my vice president. And the funny thing is, my 7-year-old is in the background and he has no idea what's going on. And I love that, right? It's one of the good things about this. He has no clue what's going on. He's like, Dad, who are you talking to? He's talking about Pokemon cards, right?
Pokemon cards? I'm too old to know what these are, but I will leave a picture of Pokemon cards. I'm pretty sure little kids like them. Who knows? Maybe even teenagers, maybe young adults, maybe even people my age. I do not know much about them, but it seems like JD Vance's son, who is 7, right? He's 7. He likes Pokemon cards.
He said, JD, you just missed a very important phone call. I'm going to have to pick somebody else now. So I'm about to brick here. And then he says, no, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I want you to be my vice president. And the funny thing is, my 7-year-old is in the background and he has no idea what's going on. And I love that, right? It's one of the good things about this. He has no clue what's going on. He's like, Dad, who are you talking to? He's talking about Pokemon cards, right? And Trump hears my son in the background and he says, well, who's that? And I said, that's my 7-year-old son, And he's like, put him on the phone.
Put him on the phone. He says it really quickly. Put him on the phone. That might even be an idiom, but it is another way to say hand or give somebody the phone so I can talk to them. Put them on the phone. Try saying that very quickly. Put them on the phone.
Well, who's that? And I said, that's my 7-year-old son, And he's like, put him on the phone. And I'm just anxious for him to get this statement out, because in my mind, It's not final until the statement is actually out. And he talks to my son and he reads the statement that he is going to put out on Truth Social announcing that I'm the VP nominee of the Republican Party. And he's like, what do you think about that, Ewan?
Anxious? It's just another way to say you are feeling nervous or worried. Truth Social. I don't know much about this social media platform, but I think it's the one that President Trump started. I don't think it's all that popular. I do not post English lessons to Truth Social. I think it's supposed to be like Twitter, or what they call Twitter now, X.
And he talks to my son and he reads the statement that he is going to put out on Truth Social announcing that I'm the VP nominee of the Republican Party. And he's like, what do you think about that, Ewan? And my son Ewan's like, oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then he gives the phone back to me. He's like, I have no idea what the hell's going on.
He doesn't
and
even
it's
know
funny.
what that means.
Yeah, he has no idea.
Crazy.
And of course, I remember this story because, in particular, and the Madison Square Garden rally of a few days ago was the first time that my son actually met Donald Trump. So he'd spoken to him on the phone, but hadn't actually met him until the rally at MSG. And my 7-year-old really wanted to tell him a joke, and he remembers this phone conversation. And so he tells him this joke, and Trump kind of chuckles, but also is probably judging me because it was a somewhat inappropriate joke for a 7-year-old to tell. But yeah, here we are.
MSG, or Madison Square Garden. It is a big, famous arena in New York City. And guess what? Next month, I am going to a concert at MSG. I'm actually wearing the t-shirt now. It's Dave Matthews Band. I'm going to see the Dave Matthews Band, my favorite band. Chuckles. Laughs a little bit. Not that much, though. When JD Vance's son told President Trump the inappropriate joke, we'll talk about that. It's a joke that probably had some swearing in it. Maybe it talked about some things that only adults do. It's not like former President Trump laughed at the joke, he just chuckled. He might not have thought the joke was funny. Maybe he was just trying to be nice to the little kid. President Trump might have been judging JD Vance as a parent, judging me, thinking negative thoughts about me. Who knows? Maybe when President Trump had little kids, he didn't want them to swear. He didn't want them to say inappropriate jokes. And maybe JD Vance doesn't care as much. And Trump is like 78. JD Vance is 40. So maybe it's just like a different generation. I know my parents didn't let me swear. Not that I wanted to. Well, maybe when I was a kid, I did want to, but I was not allowed to swear in front of them. We will talk about that in just a minute, in front of them. And my kids, who are now almost adults, they don't swear in front of me. But I know there are a lot of parents, just like Joe Rogan and JD Vance, who think it's funny when little kids swear. I don't. But maybe it's just because I'm old. I'm kind of old school when it comes to parenting.
And so he tells them this joke. And Trump kind of chuckles, but also is probably judging me because it was a somewhat inappropriate joke for a 7-year-old to tell. But yeah, here we are.
Well, that's the only ones 7-year-olds remember.
That's right. Well, it's like, I have terrible language, and it's one of my many flaws. But I was raised by my very working class grandmother.
Terrible language. It's another way to say people are swearing. JD Vance admits he has terrible language. He also says he has many flaws, which is just another way to say he has a lot of mistakes. JD Vance mentions that his grandmother is working class. I put down below blue collar. JD Vance doesn't say that, but working class and blue collar are pretty much the same thing. It means people who have jobs, like in a factory, construction workers. They don't have probably a lot of formal education. They probably didn't go to college. Some people might think working class people swear more than white collar. That's almost the opposite of working class. But I know plenty of white collar people who have potty mouths. We will talk about that in a minute. It's just somebody who swears a lot, Their mouth is like a toilet. Little kids call toilets potties, maybe. Instead of asking a child in English, do you need to go to the bathroom? You might hear them say, do you need to go to the potty? Some parents will say that to their children. Do you need to go potty? A potty is a dirty place. Just like somebody who swears a lot, they have a dirty mouth.
Well, it's like, I have terrible language, and it's one of my many flaws. But I was raised by my very working class grandmother, and she was actually interestingly, she was a very devout Christian, but she also had, a language that would make a sailor blush.
JD Vance says his grandmother was a devout Christian. And that just means somebody who really follows a religion. They're not casual when it comes to religion. They're very serious about it. Another profession, at least in English, that we say swears a lot is a sailor. So you might hear that phrase, oh, she swears like a sailor. That means she swears a lot. JD Vance says his grandmother, when she talked, it would make a sailor blush. When you blush in English, that means your cheeks, these are your cheeks, they turn red because you are embarrassed. It's just another way to say somebody has a really bad potty mouth. They swear a lot.
She was awesome. She was an amazing person, a huge personality, right? We called her a force of nature because she was such this big personality. But my wife's rule is, basically he's only allowed to cuss when he's telling this one joke. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah, so he told
tells
this
that
joke to
all the
Donald Trump.
time.
Yeah, exactly. He says it 14 times a day.
He also mentions that his grandmother has a huge personality. She's a force of nature. She's not shy. If she goes to a party, she's probably talking to everybody. She has a lot of energy. In other words, if somebody has a huge personality, That is someone who is very lively and noticeable. You notice them. They are not in a corner being quiet. Swearing, you might know now, is saying bad words like the F word, the S word, the B word. But cussing is the same as swearing. I think I mentioned in front of us already, but JD Vance says his son can only swear in front of us, meaning like him and his wife. So when his son is not in the same room as JD Vance, his son is not supposed to swear.
Yeah, early on I told my kids, you can swear in front of us. I go, but don't swear in front of other parents.
Right.
And don't swear for no reason.
Right. Well, because they judge you, right? The other parents judge you. How old are your kids?
Well, the youngest ones are 14 and 16, and I have a 28-year-old.
Okay.
But when my 14-year-old was 2, we were on a skiing trip, and we were about to leave. We packed up all our stuff, but her helmet, we forgot to put her helmet away. I go, oh, we forgot to put the helmet away, and she just looks down at the helmet and she goes, my wife is just like, oh my God.
That's right.
It was so funny. There's just something adorable about a 2-year-old that doesn't know that you're not supposed to say.
No,
just
absolutely,
that cute
man.
little face.
Well, I mean, my 4-year-old, he was 3 at the time. We were going, because, we live in Cincinnati, but then I'm a senator, so we spent a lot of time in Washington, and I was taking my 4-year-old solo, he was 3 at the time, on this trip, and we're on a Delta flight. We're in the back. I'm kind of wondering, because, I've got bedhead, and I'm thinking to myself, do any of these people know that I'm a senator? Because I look like shit right now. And I sort of get away with it. I don't think that anybody notices who I am. And we're sitting there, and my son drops one of those Biscoff cookies in between the seat, and he looks at me and he says, Dad, well, and like 12 people instantly turn around and look at me. And it's like, oh, Senator Vance, your son has such colorful language. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a terrible father. And these people are all judging me.
Yeah.
But it's, but you're right. It's so cute.
Packed up all our stuff. You know that? Like when you're leaving a place and you want to take all of your things, we say that you're packing up. My students, when they leave the classroom, they pack up before they leave. They take their pens, their pencils, their lunch boxes, their backpacks. If you stay at a hotel, you are going to pack up all of your stuff before you leave. Take your things with you. Do you know this word? Adorable. It's another way to say cute. Little kids can be adorable. Little dogs. If you are a dog person, we call them puppies, those little dogs, they can be adorable. And I'm sure as I'm speaking right now, I will have a picture of an adorable dog. Who knows? Maybe even an adorable child. Potty mouth. We already talked about that. That's how you spell potty mouth. JD Vance is from Cincinnati, and that is a really big city in Ohio. He is from Ohio. I will put up a map of where Ohio is located. JD Vance says he is taking his son solo. Solo means like one or alone. So he is taking his son without his wife. He's on his own.
I mean, my 4-year-old, he was 3 at the time. We were going, because, we live in Cincinnati, but then I'm a senator, so we spent a lot of time in Washington, and I was taking my 4-year-old solo, he was 3 at the time, on this trip, and we're on a Delta flight. We're in the back. I'm kind of wondering, because, I've got bedhead.
Bedhead. I have a picture of bedhead for you. It just means really messy hair because you have slept on it all night. Hey, I can now have bedhead. Thanks to Cab Health, I will give them a shout out. They gave me a hair transplant this summer. They are awesome. I will leave a link to their clinic in the description box below. If you would like 10% off your hair transplant, mention my name, Brent.
Because, we live in Cincinnati, but then I'm a senator, so we spent a lot of time in Washington, and I was taking my 4-year-old solo, he was 3 at the time, on this trip, and we're on a Delta flight. We're in the back. I'm kind of wondering, because, you know, I've got bedhead, and I'm thinking to myself, do any of these people know that I'm a senator? Because I look like shit right now.
I will not say this word, but JD Vance said that he looked like, let's just say crap, because of his bedhead. He really didn't want anyone to know that he was a senator. And on the plane, he thought he was going to get away with it. Be on the plane, look like crap, but nobody knows that he's actually a senator. He wanted to do something without being punished. The punishment would have been, oh, that's our senator? He doesn't look very good. Has he taken a shower? Has he combed his hair? But of course, because his son said a bad word really loud, everybody now knows he's on the plane.
I'm thinking to myself, do any of these people know that I'm a senator? Because I look like shit right now. And sort of get away with it. I don't think that anybody notices who I am. And we're sitting there, and my son drops one of those Biscoff cookies in between the seat. And he looks at me and he says, Dad, well, and like 12 people instantly turn around and look at me. And it's like, oh, Senator Vance, your son has such colorful language. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a terrible father. And these people are all judging me.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, but you're right. It's so cute.
Biscoff cookies. I had never heard of those before. I will put up a picture of Biscoff cookies. I guess they're from Belgium. And his son dropped them in between the seats. And his son also dropped an F-bomb. You know the F word in English? I hope you do, because I am not going to say it. But when somebody says it, you might hear they dropped an F-bomb. It's a good way to say they said that word without actually saying the word. Do you know? Turn around. So when in the airplane, when his son said that word, everyone turned around, looked. Oh, there's the senator. He's got bedhead. His son is dropping F-bombs. And one last idiom about swearing. Sometimes you will hear that called colorful language. JD Vance admits that he has colorful language. He got that from his grandmother, and the definition right down there, using strong or rude words. I hope your English is a little better. We talked about at least 43 new terms. If you're looking for more English, right down there is that lesson I did about the RNC. And right over there is a hotel in Milwaukee. You made it to the end of an English lesson. Nice job. It was a long one. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.